What is one trick that companies don't want you to know? I used to work at a PC repair shop and had to call HP warranty support in India almost every day. Talking with someone using a script plus language barrier equals aggravating and time-consuming. I learned that if you select the option for Spanish, you get transferred to a call center in Texas. From there, you can just speak English.
That's an interesting experience. Dealing with tech support can be frustrating, especially with language barriers. It's funny how a simple option can change the whole situation. I guess you just have to find the shortcuts in those annoying processes. Sometimes, it's about knowing how to navigate the system, right? It's good that you found a way to make those calls a bit easier.
I used to work at a call center that handled people canceling services. We were paid based on how many people we saved from canceling compared with the total number of potential saves. However, certain times customers didn't count as potential saves. These people we just needed to get off the phone ASAP. If you want to cancel a service, you want to not be a potential save. To do this, I suggest stating that you are moving to another country. Canceling cable? Say you're moving to the United Arab Emirates. It'll take 2 minutes.
That's an interesting take on handling calls. I remember when my friend worked at a similar call center. He had to deal with some strange reasons for canceling services. People would make up the wildest excuses just to get off the phone faster. It was a bit of a game for him, figuring out who was genuine and who just wanted to hang up. Sometimes, keeping it simple works best.
Just because a store is branded as a certain company doesn't mean it's owned and operated by that company. For example, if you don't like Shell gas and decide to go to the Exxon down the street, Shell may still own and operate that store, but fly Exxon's flag. They just pay Exxon a small fee to keep their branding up.
That makes sense. I remember a time when I noticed a local gas station that looked like it had a big brand name. I always assumed it was the real deal, but then a friend told me it was just a smaller operator using the branding. It was surprising. It kind of changes how you think about where you're filling up. It's good to know the details, you know?
You know how it's almost impossible to get scammers to stop calling? Well, almost. I'm 100% convinced there are black market phone lists floating around because I'm almost positive I got myself removed from at least one of them because practically overnight I stopped getting scam calls from a wide variety of different scams, and with one simple trick. Hold on a sec, I have to turn on the recording for the FCC. Obviously, this only works in the US, but you could substitute your local regulatory agency, and it would probably work just as well. The dude hung up so fast, it wasn't even funny, and I never got any more calls from that scam, and I stopped getting calls from different scams pretty quickly after I created this trick.
That's smart. Just saying your recording can really turn the tables. I had a similar experience. I once told a scammer I was going to take their info to the police, and they hung up too. Just like that, the calls dropped significantly. It's kind of wild how just a little bit of pressure can make them back off. Honestly, putting the fear of authority in them works surprisingly well.
I've never paid full price for Sirius XM radio. I received a free year with the purchase of my car. After that year was up, they called me up to renew at something like $20 per MO. Why would I pay you $20 per MO to listen to whatever you send me, when I could pay $10 per MO to Spotify and listen to whatever I want? Sir, we can offer you 6 months of Sirius XM for $20. Would you be interested in that? Yep, I don't want to be auto-billed, invoice me. I performed this dance every 6 months for the past 3 years.
That's pretty clever. I get the appeal of Sirius, but yeah, it's hard to justify the cost when you can have so much on demand with something like Spotify. You just gotta keep negotiating and find the sweet spot. It's like a game at this point. Keeps things interesting, I guess. Plus, you still get to enjoy the service without breaking the bank. Rinse and repeat.
I had a locksmith tell me that I could not program my own RFID chipped key using 2 original keys in my Jeep's computer, and that I either had to have him do it or pay even more at a dealership to have them do it, and buy a chip key from him for $30. I knew better. I bought an $8 chipped key off eBay, programmed it myself using instructions online. The seller also sent me programming instructions and had it physically copied at that same locksmith for $2. Also, there were instructions in the Jeep's owner's manual. Note, the way the computer programs the key is that you basically insert the first original key, turn the ignition on, then the second original key, and then the new key that then gets programmed. I also had a non-chipped key that I had made earlier, just to open the Jeep's doors, and taped that key to the chipped blank key to fool the Jeep's computer into thinking that the chipped key was being inserted. Locksmith would have charged me upwards of $80 when I did it myself for about $12. Locksmiths hate me.
It's funny how some people think they know everything. That locksmith really missed the mark. You found a way around it, and for way less money. Just goes to show, sometimes the DIY route works best. Those instructions in the manual really paid off, huh? It's nice to save cash, especially when someone tries to rip you off. Guess you showed him who really knows their stuff.
Flowers. Stop using the big corporate, national flower companies that pay pennies on the dollar to local florists. Instead, call the same shops that the shithole 800 number company contracts to locally. Chances are they will give you a better deal, more flowers, and better quality simply because they actually get more money from you via direct sale. Florists hate 800 flower companies. It screws them out of profits, but they're forced to use them because so many people use the corporate flower brokers.
I remember a time when I wanted to send flowers to a friend. Instead of going through one of those big national companies, I found a local florist. They were nice and offered better options than expected. My friend loved the flowers, and it felt good supporting a local business. I realized how much a small decision like that mattered, both for me and the florist. Sometimes it's the little things that make a difference.
Write companies letters. They usually give you free swag, or at least discounts. I wrote Sega once a long time ago. They sent me the coolest Sonic and Knuckles t-shirt ever. The game had just came out for Genesis. I love that shirt. Edit. Snail mail works best. Handwritten or printed doesn't matter. Also, don't be an asshole.
That's pretty cool. Companies often appreciate fan mail. I remember when I wrote to a gaming company too. They sent me some stickers and a keychain. Simple stuff, but it felt nice to get something back. It's nice to see brands connect with their fans like that. Plus, it's always fun to show off a cool shirt or two. Handwritten notes definitely add a personal touch.
If you stay at a hospital, ask for an itemized bill, especially if staying at a state or locally funded one. Reason for this, hospitals like to sneak in hidden charges for services you didn't receive, like pelvic exams when you went in for a broken arm. This can save you hundreds of dollars on your bill.
Yeah, I had a friend who stayed in the hospital. They got a bill that had all sorts of weird charges on it, like for tests they never got. They asked for the itemized bill and realized they could save a lot. It was a hassle, but totally worth it in the end. It's a good reminder to always check what you're being charged for. Never hurts to be cautious with medical bills.
Several airlines have a policy where you can cancel your flight ticket with a full refund within 24 hours of booking it. Most airlines' cancellation policies do not state this fact explicitly on the websites, e.g. I've done a complete scan Lufthansa's and United's cancellation policies on their website, but couldn't find this anywhere. Their customer care confirmed it on phone. This is particularly useful when you have to show make confirmed flight reservations to be submitted along with your visa applications. Schengen, US, UK, etc. need this. I've used this method several times for my visa applications to UK and Schengen successfully.
This reminds me of a time when I needed a flight for a visa. I booked one but wasn't sure about it. After learning about the 24-hour cancellation rule, I felt relieved. I canceled and rebooked a better flight without losing money. Did it a few times for different visas, and it always worked out. Really handy if you asked me, especially when you need to provide those confirmations.
Airlines sometimes have cheaper flights to distant destinations that change planes in your intended destination city. So if you're flying to Chicago, you might book a flight to LA, knowing it stops in Chicago, and simply get off and not board the second leg. There is a website called skiplag.com that is being sued by United for informing people how to take advantage of it.
I remember when a friend did this on a flight to New York. He booked a ticket to Boston that had a layover in New York. He just got off at the layover, saving quite a bit of cash. It felt sneaky but clever. Then we found out about Skiplag, which makes it easier for people to find these types of flights. It's interesting how airlines react to these tactics.
The name brand products you buy at Walmart are of inferior quality to the same product at regular stores. Learn this in a business course, specifically in reference to name brand shampoo and toothpaste, but applicable to many products. Walmart demands lower prices, so manufacturers lower quality.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. A friend once switched from his usual brand shampoo to one he found at Walmart, thinking he was saving money. After a week, he complained it made his hair feel greasy and damaged. He ended up going back to the original brand he got at a regular store. Sometimes, cheaper isn't really better, especially when it comes to quality. Just something to keep in mind.
Companies that say they won't sell your information are actually trading it for something of value. Example: school asks for generic information regarding your emails, phone number, age, and gender, and trades it to a car dealership for a car that they will later raffle off for cash. It happens pretty much all the time. It's a giant loophole. They aren't selling, they're trading.
That kind of thing happens more often than you'd think. I've seen schools and organizations gather info from people under the guise of keeping it private, but then they find ways to profit from it. It makes you wonder about how much your info is actually worth and who's really getting the benefits. It's just a weird back and forth with people's data that doesn't feel right.
My brother-in-law was a brand manager for some breakfast bar that had chocolate chips in it. They increased the chips by 50% for like a month and spent shitloads of ad money behind it, like 8x their typical budget, then abruptly stopped. The consumer's awareness and belief in more chips outlasted the cost of actually using more chips. It was very profitable. He got promoted. So sleazy and dishonest. Pay attention, people.
That's interesting. It shows how marketing can really impact consumer perception. Increasing the chocolate chips for just a month created a lasting impression. It's kind of wild how they spent so much on ads and it paid off long term. Your brother-in-law seems to have a knack for understanding consumer behavior. It's a bit shady, but I guess that's business sometimes. Just goes to show how powerful a good campaign can be.
If you are in Walgreens and buying Walgreens brand merchandise with a pre-printed price, there are always some letters under them. This is the cost of the item. It uses an alphanumeric replacement code. Brush clean equals 123 for 567890. So if something is coded BU, then its cost is 13 cents. Something BUN would cost $1.30. I do not know how useful it is, but it is kind of fun to see what some of the costs are of things in the store.
I remember going to a store and noticing those price codes too. I had no idea what they meant at first. I just thought it was a weird way to price things. My friend explained it to me, and it made shopping a bit more interesting. It's like a secret code for prices. Sometimes I find myself guessing what the codes stand for while browsing. Just a little brain game while shopping.
Not sure if this answers the question, but used to work for Cold Stone Creamery. We got stupid size names, yeah okay. We also got major criticism for having a milkshake that was over 2,000 calories for the gotta have it size, or the large size. Evidently, corporate's response to this criticism was to get rid of the gotta have it size cup and introduce a cup smaller than the like it cup we already had. So we had the new like it, the cup that used to be the like it as the new medium cup, and the cup that used to be the love it as a large cup. So basically we changed the sizes of all of the cups, but didn't change the prices to reflect the smaller size. I felt like I was swindling people out of their money every time I made a milkshake.
It's wild how companies handle criticism sometimes. I had a friend who worked at a fast food place, and they did something similar. They downsized their burgers but kept everything the same price. It felt dishonest, and he didn't really like it. At the end of the day, it's just a weird way to make more money and not really care about customer satisfaction. Makes you wonder what goes on behind the scenes.
I use a Chrome extension called Page Monitor that basically checks the page and looks for anything on the page that changed. I specifically select the price area on that page to be alerted when it changes. Recently, I used it to get some Mobil 1 synthetic motor oil on sale from Walmart. The price would generally change from $26 to $24, and I'd be alerted each time. And then it eventually went down to about $22. And I bought it. Yeah, it is not much savings, but even $4 saved is $4 in my pocket. Plus, I had a rebate offer that saved me an additional $12 on said oil.
That's a smart way to save some cash. I've done similar things before, just keeping an eye on prices until they drop. It feels good when you snag a deal like that. Every bit helps, right? Even small savings add up over time. Plus, getting a rebate on top of that is a nice bonus. Good job on being patient and waiting for the right price.
Store brand food products are manufactured/produced by the name brand companies. For example, IGA brand bread is the exact same recipe, bakery, even delivery guy as Sunbeam bread in the South. The only difference being that the IGA bread is baked earlier in the morning, Sunbeam being baked later, closer to deliver. Therefore, it's fresher.
It's interesting how store brands can be the same quality as name brands. I remember going grocery shopping with a friend who was certain that buying the generic version was a waste. We did a taste test at home with a few items. Turns out, he couldn't really tell the difference. Now, he always checks for the store brand first. It's just funny how perception can change with a little experience.
I'm not sure if this is true or not, but my econ teacher once told me that if you take a loan from a bank, you can ask to make payments on a bi-monthly basis as opposed to a monthly basis, and that should reduce the amount of interest you pay. Edit, Jesus. Bi-monthly does mean twice in 1 month. Stop sending me messages about it. Edit X2. This post and the ensuing comments are not actually about getting better loans. The discussion is in fact about the proper use of bi-weekly, bi-monthly, semi-weekly, semi-monthly, and fortnightly. It's impressively stupid.
It's funny how something simple like loan payments can spark a debate. I remember a time in school when a friend confused similar terms in math class. Everyone was trying to correct him, and it turned into this whole thing. We laughed about it later, but at the moment, it was just chaos. Language can be tricky, and you end up overthinking it. Sometimes, it's just easier to keep it simple.
Goo Gone is just W40 that smells like oranges. Vinegar works just as good as Jet Dry. Vinegar works just as good as CLR. Root X and most branded root killer products are just copper sulfate. Nothing sold inside a gas station is as cheap as it is from a grocery store. You don't always have to be a kid to order from the kids menu. Car air filters are incredibly cheap and probably the easiest part to replace. Don't pay someone to change an air filter. The date/mileage that oil change mechanics put on your sticker is almost always sooner than what the manufacturer recommends. Edit. Remembered one more.
Seems like you found some solid life hacks. It's interesting how common items can do the job just as well or even better than the pricey alternatives. I remember my friend once bought this expensive cleaner, and I just used vinegar for the same mess. He was kind of surprised. Car maintenance is another one. I learned early on that some things are easy to do yourself. Good times figuring all that stuff out.
Your cable and cell phone costs are negotiable, without giving anything up in exchange for lower rates. This is especially true after you become a customer for a few months. They'll give you a song and dance on why they're the best, but stay firm. If they don't lower your rate, you'll go with a competitor.
I had a friend who was paying way too much for cable and phone. After a couple of months, he decided to call and ask for a lower rate. They gave him the usual sales pitch, but he just said he'd switch to another provider if they didn't budge. They lowered his bill right away. It's a simple strategy, but it worked for him. Sometimes you just have to be direct.
There are a few comments in here about planned obsolescence, and that is certainly true. But there are some products that, in order to be merely very good, are by necessity over-engineered and will last a lifetime. I usually refer to these as workhorses. Consequently, never buy workhorses new. Seek them out on eBay or Craigslist or the like. The manufacturers are always coming out with the latest model, but chances are you really don't need those few new features. A KitchenAid Mix Master is one example. Take reasonable care of it, and it will last a lifetime. KitchenAid has just come out with a new 7-quart size, but chances are the 6-quart size, which was the latest and greatest thing just a year or two ago, will serve your needs, will still last a lifetime, and can be had for half the price of a new model. Small appliances, large appliances, power tools, and even bicycles are like this. Do your research and find the well-regarded, durable models, and save a fortune by buying used ones. Better still is to find a factory refurbished model.
I had a friend who loved using old tools. He'd always find these vintage power tools at yard sales. People would overlook them for the flashy new stuff. He'd bring them back to life, and they'd work like new. He said the older models were usually built better anyway. He saved a lot of money and ended up with equipment that would last. It was all about knowing what to look for.
I worked at a high level in the food service industry for years, and I have many examples of what the entire industry doesn't want people to know. Here is just one because I can write a novel. The grill marks on grilled chicken at most fast food restaurants are created with chemicals and artificial flavors before it is IQF, instant quick freeze, boxed, stored for months at a warehouse, then delivered to your local fast food joint where it goes into their freezer for however long. Then you order it, and it is heated up by whatever method they use. Flat top grill, microwave, etc. They can call it grill because of technicalities. It was never on what you would naturally think is a grill. This is not even close to the worst thing I know. It's just the easiest to explain. There is some serious science that goes into tricking the public into thinking something is what it isn't. Needless to say, I do not eat out ever. Ever. Ever.
That's an eye-opener for sure. It makes you think twice about what you're really eating. A friend of mine used to work at a chain restaurant, and he confirmed a lot of this. He said the back kitchen was a whole different world from what customers see. He doesn't eat fast food anymore either. It's crazy how much goes on behind the scenes that people don't know about.
Disposable razor blades can be sharpened by using DeNu IM pants. Take a pair of pants and run the blade up a few times, then down a few times. It cleans the rust off the blades and adds many more shaves onto the life of those expensive blades. Edit. Okay, jeans, damn it, jeans. I don't know what jeans are called around to the world, and wanted to be general with the term thanks. Yet for now on I'm calling my jeans DeNu IM. Edit. Yeah, well, thanks for helping a brother out. For the record, I have disabled all the spell checkers in my life in hopes of relearning how to spell and stuff.
That's an interesting tip about razor blades. I didn't know you could use denim to sharpen them. I guess it's one of those life hacks that makes you rethink everyday items. Also, the struggle with spelling can be real. Having the spell check off might lead to some funny typos, but it could help in the long run. Just takes practice, I guess.
So the main trend that I have noticed in this thread is don't buy product X because it is the same as product Y at 4 times the cost. So being the rational person that I am, I will definitely be testing out all the cheaper generic equivalents of all the things I frequently buy to see if they are actually of equal quality. With this in mind, why the hell is there not a website or app out there that tells you which name brand products are merely the same as their generic equivalent, but with a heavier price tag and flashier packaging? Does this exist, and I just don't know of it? It seems pretty ironic to me now that we often identify generic products as being knockoffs of the name brand ones. Starting to feel like certain name brand products are actually the knockoffs of the generic ones. TLDR, fuck you, Reynolds. I trusted you.
That really resonates. I've had moments where I realized I was paying more for something just for the brand name. It's funny how we associate value with those brands. Tried a few generic products myself, and some have been better than the originals. A price comparison app could definitely help people figure this out. It's wild to think the real knockoffs might be the high-priced ones. Good luck with your testing.
If you need to cancel a service over the phone, such as cable, you can wait an extremely long time. I waited over an hour and eventually hung up. Instead, hit the button to start service. Someone will answer in minutes. Then have them direct you to customer service, where you can then cancel your service.
I had a similar experience with my internet provider. I called to cancel, but the wait was unbearable. After what felt like forever, I gave up. Then I tried the same trick, starting a new service. They picked up fast. I just asked to be transferred, and it worked. It's kind of funny how they prioritize new customers over those looking to leave. Smart move, but I'm not falling for it again.
Comcast and other cable companies really don't want you to contact your local government when you have ongoing cable problems that aren't getting resolved. Cable providers are bound by franchise agreements with local governments to provide certain levels of service and respond to complaints in a timely fashion. If they fail to do so, they can face fines and fees. So if you're having problems that just aren't getting fixed, tell your local government officials, and that will get the ball rolling. Source: worked for Comcast for 4.5 years and handled escalations, among other things.
I had a friend who dealt with ongoing cable issues. Every time he'd call customer support, it was like talking to a brick wall. Eventually, he reached out to his local government, and things changed fast. The cable company suddenly became more responsive. It was interesting to see how that little push had such a big impact. Sometimes, going up the ladder really works.
For guitarists, you don't need to buy expensive strap locks and ruin a vintage guitar installing them. You can use those white plastic locks that come on bread, or even better, get yourself a 4-pack of Grolsch beer and use the rubber stoppers from the bottles. Saves money and gets your either fed or buzzed smiley face.
That's a pretty clever tip. I remember when I was learning guitar, I was paranoid about my straps slipping off. Instead of buying the fancy locks, I just used some old bottle caps. They held up fine and I had some cheap beer after too. It worked out well for me and was way less stressful. Keeps the vintage vibe intact.
Whenever I get a call that I'm relatively sure is from a telemarketer/scammer, I just pick up and sit on the line for a bit with dead air. Any legit company will identify itself as such, which you can Google or whatever to check, or call back. Telemarketers/scammers have a list 10,000 names long and would rather move on to the next one than keep trying on what seems to be a deadline. Maybe it's just snake oil. All I know is I never seem to get callbacks. Edit. I've also smashed my palm on my keypad to simulate a fax machine. Automated call systems always hang up immediately when I do this. A real human will usually freak out a bit and ask if I'm there a few times before hanging up.
That's a pretty clever tactic. I get those kinds of calls all the time too. Just letting the line go silent seems like a solid way to weed out the scammers. The whole fax machine thing is next level though. I might just have to try that out. It's funny how they're just looking for the next target, and a little confusion on the line can throw them off entirely.
So, I don't know if this is a true story or not. One time I heard that a toothpaste company was wanting to increase their profits. This guy told them he could nearly double their profits, and in return he wanted 10% of the increase. So they agreed, and he told them to make the opening larger. More toothpaste out equals more toothpaste bought.
That's an interesting story. It's kind of wild how simple changes can lead to big gains. I mean, just making a larger opening seems so straightforward, yet it makes total sense. It's like people sometimes overlook the obvious solutions in business. You can imagine the boardroom reactions when they realized that was all it took. Funny how the simplest ideas can have the biggest impact.
Laundry detergent is the most notable example for me. They purposely make the directions confusing and the lines on the inside impossible to see. There are like 5 levels and they are marked by a small ring of the same material as the cap, and you can't read any of it. So everyone just fills it up and uses way too much.
I get it. I once did laundry for a friend who had one of those weird caps. I just assumed more was better and ended up with way too many bubbles. The washing machine looked like a science experiment gone wrong. My friend laughed when they saw my disaster, but I learned to check the instructions next time. Now, I just stick to the basics.
You're lucky. When I needed an extra key for my car, the dealer wanted to charge me $500 total. $100 for the key, $50 to cut it, $50 to program it with the alarm, $300 to program it to the ECU for transponder. I ended up getting a $50 key with a transponder and chips on eBay and a $100 transponder programmer.
It's good that you found a cheaper way. Car dealers can really overcharge for simple services. Getting the key and programmer online saved you a lot of money. It's pretty common for people not to realize how much they could save by doing research. Makes you feel a bit smarter when you can handle things like that yourself. Just goes to show that sometimes the easiest solution is right in front of you.
I actually like UPS better in my area because if I'm not home, the package actually gets delivered to the UPS store that day, and I can pick it up, but for whatever reason the mail carrier on my route for Canada Post never delivers the packages to the pickup location until the next morning. So I can't pick anything up from Canada Post until the day after it arrives.
I get that. It's frustrating when you can't get your stuff right away. It's like waiting for your favorite show to drop a new episode. I've had similar experiences too, where delivery systems just don't match. It kinda makes you appreciate the ones that actually deliver on time. UPS sounds more reliable for you. Sometimes it's just about what works best in your area.
I used to work at Radio Shack. We had a $50 rule. If the customer was complaining about something that could be solved for less than $50, immediately say yes and do it. Nobody would get in trouble for spending less than $50 to retain a customer. Anything more than $50 needed regional management's approval. Of course, Radio Shack is out of business now, so I don't know whether that customer service model actually works.
That $50 rule sounds practical for keeping customers happy. Just making quick decisions can really save a lot of hassle. It's a shame Radio Shack didn't make it, though. Seems like good service alone isn't always enough to keep a business afloat in today's market.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.